Right, hello everybody. Today I would like to talk about a book called The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. And I'll get straight into it. I will tell the story first, and then we'll kind of go back, and then we'll talk about Oscar Wilde, and then we'll talk about the themes, and so on and so forth. So, essentially, what happens at the beginning of the book, you have Dorian Gray, and you have Basil Hallward, and you have Lord Henry Wotton. And essentially what's happening is Basil is painting a picture of Dorian Gray. Dorian Gray is a young man, very handsome, born into a rich family, and Basil is using him as a muse. Basil is a professional artist, not too wealthy, but he's doing okay. He's painted many pictures. He's painted this picture of Dorian. He thinks this picture is the best thing he's ever done. He's having a conversation with his friend Henry. Henry is a rich, hedonistic lord of England, a very cynical man. And they're talking about the picture, and they're having a back and forth. And Henry wants to meet Dorian. Basil says it's a bad idea because he knows that Henry will corrupt Dorian. But anyway, they end up meeting. And Henry starts saying to Dorian, beauty is the most important thing in life, and you should chase beauty and chase pleasure. Essentially, he presents a hedonistic philosophy to him. Essentially, he presents to him the idea that pleasure is the highest moral good, right? I think they call it the ancient Epicurean idea, isn't it? Yeah, but I mean, although to be fair to Epicurus, the ancient Greek philosopher, I think he actually believed in leading more of a balanced lifestyle. He wasn't an advocate for hedonism, so to speak. But nonetheless, interestingly, he was an atomist as well, right? And we live in the age of atomism now. We live in the age of Epicurean atomism and the pursuit of pleasure. But whatever. Henry tells Dorian Gray, this is what life is all about. Pleasure, 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 youth, beauty, etc., etc. Dorian listens to Henry, and then he sells his soul to the devil, right? For the sake of having an eternal youth, essentially. And some people say that Henry is actually the devil. I don't think he is. I think he definitely represents the devil. He definitely represents a bad influence on Dorian Gray's life, whereas Basil represents a good influence. So it's more like, you got the angel on one shoulder, the devil on the other shoulder, pulling Dorian Gray in two different directions. But some people have argued that Dorian doesn't actually sell his soul to the devil. What he actually says is, if it were I who was to be always young, and the picture that was to grow old, for that I would give everything. Yes, there is nothing in the whole world I would not give. I would give my soul for that, right? And then you hear the thunder and lightning in the background. No, you don't. But anyway, it's a Gothic novel. So no actual pact with the devil, but he does say it, and he says it out loud. And so essentially this story is a Faustian story, right? And what do I mean by that? Well, a long time ago, in the Elizabethan period, Christopher Marlowe wrote a book about the legend of Faust. And Faust was he was actually a real person, but his real life is all being mixed up with mythology. But he was a kind of like a Renaissance kind of magician that lived in Germany, I think in the 15th century. And the Faustian novel, essentially, Faust sells his soul to the devil, right? Faust sells his soul for knowledge. He sells his soul. The name of the demon is Mephistopheles. Mephistopheles. Anyway, this is the old ancient Faustian myth. Goethe later on rewrites it as another play or another novel, and then of course later on Oswald Spengler writes the decline of the West, and he talks about Western civilization or white civilization being Faustian civilization, which I thought was kind of strange because what are you saying? We all sold our souls to the devil, right? Is that really because it's a very popular term. People on the dissident right, on the internet right, ethno-nationalists, they like to say, oh, the white race is a Faustian civilization. I don't really, I don't personally get too excited about that. What are you saying? We're a bunch of devil worshippers, right? That's the glory of the European race. We worship the devil. Okay, very interesting. But nonetheless, I mean, as far as I understand it, that's one of the first, if not the first, but the most important example in Western literature of somebody selling their soul to the devil. It's the Faustian pack. And this is essentially what the picture of Dorian Gray is all about. He sells his soul to the devil for eternal youth. And, I mean, I guess in one way we do live in the Faustian age, don't we? Because we do live in an age of devil worship. It's the interesting thing. I have a little bit of an obsession with this. I got to admit to you, because I am a little bit obsessed and possessed with the idea of the pentagram. And whenever I think of America, I just cannot get it out of my head that there is a giant pentagram carved into the street plan of Washington, D.C., and the White House is in the middle of it. And I think at the very top there's a Masonic temple. Though to be fair to the Masons, they didn't get involved with pentagrams until later. I think original Freemasonry wasn't into that kind of thing. But the pentagram is in the American flag. The pentagram is in many, many flags of many, many countries these days. I always think it's an indicator of some kind of Masonic influence or some kind of secret society influence. It is a modern thing. In ancient Europe, we used to have a Christian flag. We used to have the Celtic cross, like the English flag or the Swedish flag. Many examples of this. The only flag that used to have a pentagram in it in ancient times was Islam. But which is interesting, because what is the pentagram? The pentagram is Venus. Venus is the morning star. The morning star is the devil. The morning star is Lucifer. Right? And how do you end up worshipping the devil? How do you end up getting involved in Satanism? Well, you follow the philosophy of hedonism. You follow the aesthetic philosophy. You follow the idea that pleasure is the highest good. Pleasure is the highest good. If pleasure is the highest good, you can do anything you want as long as you enjoy it, right? So if you want to join the Illuminati and you want to engage in ritualistic human sacrifice, what's the problem? Pleasure is the highest good, and you have to do what you have to do in order to satisfy your senses, right? That's why that moral philosophy will lead you into a very bad and dark direction. So the pentagram represents Venus. If you look at the path of Venus in the night sky, it kind of like carves out a pentagram every 8 years, as far as I understand it. And the pentagram is used for the summoning of demons. This is what happens in the myth of Faust. He uses the pentagram to summon a demon. And it's everywhere now. It started off, it was in Islam. They say it was in the ancient Sumerian religion. The Egyptians used not a pentagram, but a 5-pointed star to represent Venus, I think. Or maybe it was just to represent stars, I'm not sure. But I think the real origin of the pentagram comes from the Star of David, which King Solomon uses to build Solomon's temple. Now, the Star of David these days is represented as a 6-pointed star. But in medieval times, it was also represented sometimes as a 5-pointed star, a pentagram, essentially. And so what happened is, we had the Crusades, the Knights Templar, they go over to King Solomon's temple. We conquer, the temple's been destroyed, but we go to Jerusalem, we conquer Jerusalem, and while we're there, some of these Christian monks, they talk to the Jews, they end up getting initiated into weird Jewish occultism, they end up worshipping the Baphomet, they end up using the pentagram. This is a big conspiracy. The French get fed up with it. I think it's King Philip II, but don't quote me on that. They burn all the Knights Templar. There's a big conspiracy. Many of these people run away. They go to Scotland. At that time, there's the Old Alliance between Scotland and France, so there's a political connection there. Many of them go to Scotland, and then a few hundred years later, Freemasonry appears in Scotland, and that is the history of Freemasonry, according to the Freemasons themselves. So, although original Freemasonry doesn't have pentagrams in it, but they do worship the Baphomets. Although arguably that came later. I mean, I don't know. The whole thing's a mishmash hodgepodge, isn't it? It's a giant mishmash hodgepodge. But nonetheless, the pentagram is well known to be a thing that is used for the summoning of demons. King Solomon, when he built the Temple of Solomon, he summoned 72 demons to help him build the temple, and he used the Star of David to do it, the Shield of David to do it. They say it's a 6-pointed star. Many people say it's a 5-pointed pentagram. So anyway, going on a little bit of a tangent here. All I'm saying is pentagrams summon demons. They symbolize Venus. Venus is Lucifer. They symbolize the pursuit of pleasure. And that is what is going on in our world. So you see pentagrams everywhere. It's worrying. It's worrying. I've been investigating this on Twitter, actually. I did a massive thread talking about this. But it seems like, because I was talking about the Irish, and, a lot of people these days, they get into witchcraft. They get into Wicca. Gerard Gardner's Wicca. And so all of these, girls are into this kind of thing. Blokes are usually into, like, different types of paganism. Norse paganism or Roman paganism. Usually it's girls that get into Wicca because they want to have a witch's hat and they want to cast spells and what have you. But the modern day Wicca movement is filled with pentagrams. Original witchcraft didn't really have that. I'm not saying original witchcraft is good, but the original witchcraft is more associated with Gaelic culture, because obviously witches celebrate Samhain, Halloween, and the other one, Beltane, or whatever it's called. They celebrate the 4 Gaelic festivals that we have every year. So it's Irish mythology. So original witchcraft is very much connected to Irish mythology. But now witchcraft is very much connected to the pentagram. This is a modern creation. This is a modern thing. The pentagram has been pushed into this ancient Irish religion. And so, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. It's in, I think, doesn't Rockstar Games have a pentagram as their symbol? Right? Am I wrong? I remember years ago, REM, when they were famous, they were selling T-shirts with the pentagram on it. Many, many, many such cases, many, many examples, many, many pentagrams everywhere. It's a symbol of Venus. It's a symbol of the devil. It's used to raise the devil. Anyway, point being, Dorian Gray sells his soul to the devil. It's a Faustian story that we have here. There are no pentagrams in this story, okay? But I'm just trying to illustrate the point that this book is a Faustian book, okay? It's about man. It's about the choice. It's about a man selling his soul to the devil for sensual pleasure and the consequences of that. So what happens is Dorian Gray, he says this thing frivolously, and then he starts to associate with Henry. They become friends, and Henry is encouraging him to follow sensuality and his youthful exuberance, which he does. And in the course of this, he ends up falling in love with a young actress from a poor family whose name is Sybil. Sybil is an interesting name because obviously that was a name of, in Roman mythology, it was a name for like a priestess or something like this. So he falls in love with this girl. She's a poor daughter of, she's a poor little actress. She's like 16 or 17 or something like this. Young girl. And she's playing Shakespeare. And I think, is it Romeo and Juliet? Don't quote me on that. But she's playing Shakespeare. She's acting in a Shakespearean play. He is very, very much impressed by her acting skills. And he falls in love with her, proposes to her, says they're going to get married. She's overjoyed. And he invites his friend Henry and I think Basil as well. And they go to watch her. But then her acting is terrible. She can't act. And he's embarrassed by this. And he goes to see her afterwards, and he says, "What happened to your acting ability?" And she says, "Well, I just can't I can't act. I'm so in love with you. I'm so overwhelmed with love for you that I just couldn't falsify the emotions on the stage. And he becomes very angry with her, and he's very rude to her, actually. It's quite a nasty part of the book, and he just says, well, I'm not marrying you. And she's crying, and he walks off. And it's very interesting because he doesn't really love her as a person, you see. And this is one of the key aspects of this book. Again, it's about a philosophy of asceticism, which is popular at the time, because people were asking the question of, what is the meaning of art? Art for art's self. Art for the sake of art is one of the ideas that is being thrown around. Life should emulate art. This is another idea that's being thrown around. This is what Dorian Gray is beginning to believe. Life should emulate art. So he sees this actress, and he believes in what she is doing. He believes in her like she's a priestess, essentially. She is tapping in to some higher power, something. She's channeling some kind of energy. And that's why he loves her. He doesn't love her for herself. He doesn't love her in the natural way that a man would love a woman, which is to, marry her and have children with her. No, he wants to marry her and then promote her as an actress. And he wants to invest money in her and put her in a big show and this, that, and the other. So he's interested in her for pleasure. He's not interested in her for the sake of creating a family, which is, obviously, this is the fundamental distinction. This is the problem with pursuing pleasure for the sake of pleasure. This is the problem with the hedonistic philosophy, the aesthetic philosophy. You're pursuing pleasure for pleasure's sake, and that's not what pleasure is for. Sex is not supposed to be for pleasure. Everybody seems to make this mistake these days. But sex is supposed to be for the creation of children. So sex is a beautiful thing because it's very pleasurable, but it leads to responsibility. And it essentially it leads because you chase you're in love with the woman. Why are you in love with the woman? Because you're consumed with a desire. You want to consume this woman. You have a lust for her. So you chase after the woman. Grasp the woman, you ravage her, and then the result comes 9 months later, and you've got a baby. And then all of a sudden you've got to work really, really hard to look after the baby and feed the baby. But that's the process. That's the beauty of sex within marriage for the creation of children. We take something which is one of the lowest aspects of man, which is just pure carnal, sensual desire, and it transforms that desire into something very wholesome and good, which is responsibility and the caring for something that is young and innocent and beautiful. So sex can be a beautiful thing in that way, but Dorian Gray isn't interested in that. Right? Dorian Gray doesn't want that. Dorian Gray wants sex for the sake of sex. He wants pleasure for the sake of pleasure. And as soon as he realizes that his Sybil just can't act anymore because she's in love with him, he dumps her in a nasty way. And then he goes home, and then he looks at his painting, because the painting was given to him. The picture of Dorian Gray was given to Dorian by Basil. And he looks at the painting, and there's a sneer on his face, and he's shocked by it. And then he goes to sleep. He wakes up in the morning, and he sees the sneer again, and he realizes what's happened. He realizes that the picture is growing old. He realizes that his sins are being projected onto the picture, whilst he himself is remaining unmarked. Because this is what happens. This is another lesson of this brilliant book. It is a brilliant book. In case you haven't realized that, by the way, but it's a great story. But this is one of the lessons of the story. It's that is that if you perform sinful activities, you will get old. It will age you. Look at Bill Clinton, right? Look at the state of that person. Look at the state of many of these Hollywood personalities and how they deform themselves with plastic surgery and so on and so forth. Yes. If you do bad things, it will be written on your face. It will take your youth from you. because youth is innocent. Youth, children are innocent. Children are good because they're innocent, because they haven't committed any crimes yet. Partly because they're non-sexual, they haven't reached that stage of life. Also perhaps because they're very honest. I'm a great believer in honesty. I think the whole world is being burned down because people just lie about stuff. I think that people learn to lie when they're young. Like when a child is very, very young, it will just speak the truth all the time. And then as it ages, gradually it learns to lie, right? But I think the natural instinct of the soul is just to speak the truth. This is why you can tell when someone's lying, because they'll indicate you. They'll have a twitch, or they'll cover their, or they'll play with their hair, or they'll do something or other. I watched a random video the other day, some kind of psychologist guy, and he was talking about how to, interviewing someone. Apparently, like, if you're being honest, you'll say, like, I went to the shop, I bought some beer, I came home, I did this, I did that, etc., etc. Why? If you're lying, you'll say, like, I can't even imagine how to say it, but you won't say I. You won't put I in the sentence. So the beer came from the shop. There was a movie on last night. But apparently, like, if you like these bad people, they'll say, "Oh, the knife went in." They won't say I stabbed him. They'll say the knife went in. They won't put I. So you can tell someone's lying when they if they no longer have I in the sentence anymore. I don't know. I'll have to further investigate that, but it's an interesting idea. But anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that it's natural for us to be honest. Honesty is good. Honesty connects us with the soul and brings us to God, because God is the truth, and you can only know the truth by being honest. People make the mistake these days of thinking the truth is like some scientific equation that you can figure out with your intelligence. Like, they think that the truth is mathematical. I mean, this is an old idea. This goes all the way back to Pythagoras, but the truth is not really mathematical. I mean, it may have a mathematical aspect to it. There may be a logical beauty to it. But really, the truth is something that you know through being honest. And being honest is hard, because you're going to have to say things that are going to hurt people, probably. Or they're going to be difficult to say. It's difficult to admit when you've done something wrong. It's difficult to speak out against injustice. It's difficult to speak the truth, but you have to speak the truth. And if you do speak the truth, then the knowledge will be revealed to you. If you don't speak the truth, then you'll repeat the lies, and you'll start to believe the lies. And this is how you end up with men going into women's toilets, and people think it's just perfectly normal. I just went for a walk on the beach. I saw a transvestite. I'm not even sure, actually. I'm not even sure. Sometimes you look at young teenagers these days, and it's like, is that a boy? Is that a girl? I just don't know. The haircut looks like a boy, but it also looks like she's got breasts, but she's dressed like a boy. What's going on? I don't know. Right? And she or he or it or whatever is with the mum. It's always the mum, isn't it? It's always the mum encouraging this stuff, never the father. But both of them probably believe in this nonsense. They believe the lies. It's like Star Trek. Captain Picard gets kidnapped by the Romulans. They torture him. And there's 4 lights. And Picard is, he said, they tell him, you have to say there's 5 lights. He says, but there's 4. And they torture him. They want to break him. They want to make him lie and say that 4 is 5. Because you make somebody lie in that way, and then you can make them do anything. And this is what the whole transvestite thing's about. I mean, there's many things going on, but one of the things that's going on, that is, you can have a penis and be a woman. Like, what are you talking about? This is just dishonest. But some people believe it. They believe it. And they're caught up in this whole idea that there's a difference between sex and gender. They're 2 different things. It's a madness. But obviously, if you believe the lie and you speak the lie, then now you've been manipulated. Now your mind's been broken. So, and then they can make you lie about something else and something else and something else. And it goes on and on and on and on until you're like, sacrificing babies to Moloch. Essentially, that's the end result of everything. That's where everything's heading. That's where everything in this world is heading, basically, I think, in my opinion. But anyway, point being, children speak the truth. They're honest, they're innocent, and so they're beautiful. And then they get corrupted along the way, and they get old, right? Of course, even if you're honest, you're going to get old anyway. But you know what I mean. There is a beauty, there is an innocence to youth, which is why one of the reasons why youth is so beautiful. Maybe that's one reason why some Zoomer girls are just getting old so quickly. I was talking to a girl the other day, Zoomer. She had old hands. She had old woman hands. Shocked. She knew it as well. She was embarrassed by it, as you would be. Anyway. The point being, my dear friends, Dorian sees what happens. He sees the pictures being twisted. He's upset by it. He thinks, no, I've done something really bad. I need to go and marry this girl. Right? So he's getting ready to go and see her. And his friend Henry turns up and says, sorry, mate, she's dead. She's committed suicide. And he's heartbroken. And he's really upset, and you know, Henry's very concerned to make sure that Dorian's name doesn't get, you know, mixed up with this, because he doesn't want to get him in trouble. So they make sure about that, right? They make sure about that. I mean, there's another element to this story, right? It's the aristocrat preying on the poor, right? Which is kind of what Dracula's about, isn't it? The novel Dracula came out at a similar time, didn't it? I think it came out after this, but nonetheless, Count Dracula, the aristocrat, the rich man in Transylvania, just sucking the blood out of the peasants, isn't it? And what's going on in this story? What's going on with Lord Henry and Dorian Gray? They're just these two rich bastards preying on the peasants for sensual pleasure, right? And if something goes wrong, it's it's very funny, because he just invites him to come and have dinner, and you'll forget all about it. It'll be fine, don't worry. And that's exactly what happens. He forgets all about it. Henry gives him a book. I think it's at this part of the novel he gives him a book, a yellow book, I think it is. This book is Rebus. I'm probably absolutely butchered that. Rebus. I don't know how to speak French. Against Nature, or Against the Grain. It is an 1884 novel by the French writer Joris Karl Huysmans. It's not actually the book. It's not properly explained that is the book. It's just a book of poetry that Henry gives him to soothe him, to make him feel better. But it's known that this is the book that kind of inspired Oscar Wilde to write this story, or at least one of the inspirations for the story. And I do think later on, when Wilde is prosecuted for homosexuality, I think he mentions that the connection is there. I don't think it's ever been 100% confirmed. But nonetheless, everybody basically knows that the yellow book that Dorian Gray reads is Rebus. What is this book all about? It's about, essentially, there's no real plot to the book, but it's about a reclusive, ailing aesthete, right? A rich, a rich French person who's fed up with the modern world, and who retreats into his own lifestyle of just artistic appreciation, basically, and lives a solitary life. And that's exactly what this story is all about. And it's I haven't read the book, so I can't really comment on it in any depth. But apparently there's no real plot, and it's just the author kind of expressing his musings about art and this, that, and the other in a kind of story-like fashion. But it's essentially, yes, it's about retreating. It's very gothic in that way. I mean, there's the question of what type of novel is this book, The Picture of Dorian Gray. On the one hand, it's Faustian, because he sells his soul to the devil. On the one hand, it's gothic because you've got the spooky supernatural stuff. Some people describe it as decadent. Some people describe it as part of the aesthetic movement. The Art Bourse is the ultimate example of decadent literature, according to Wikipedia, and inspired Oscar Wilde's The Picture of Dorian Gray. So I suppose The Picture of Dorian Gray is decadent. I don't know. It's always very difficult to pigeonhole literature into different categories. If you read what Wikipedia says about The Picture of Dorian Gray, they say that it's part of the aesthetic movement. So you got these two. I'm not really 100% on what these two different movements are. As far as I understand it, the aesthetic movement is about appreciating aesthetics and believing in art for art's sake and praising beauty. Art is good because it's beautiful. And the decadent movement kind of takes that a step further and basically says you should just drown yourself in art. And you should just pursue it in a hedonistic manner. So it takes the same basic idea of art for art's sake and the pursuit of beauty and the pursuit of pleasure, and then just says, yeah, just do that, but lots of it, right? That's what decadence is all about. And the word decadent itself comes from Montesquieu. Montesquieu, obviously famous philosopher. I think he wrote a book called Spirit of the Laws, which was an inspiration for the division of powers. Okay, so the Americans took a lot of inspiration from this book, in that you should have a separate legislative and a judiciary and an executive. You should have these three different divisions of power. Of course, it doesn't really work, does it, in practice? You just end up with a blob, which is what we've got. But anyway, nonetheless, Montesquieu apparently described the fall of the Roman Empire as decadent. Okay, and I don't speak French and I don't speak Latin, but decadent, like decaying, I suppose, something like that. Decline, decaying, decadent. It's like a similar meaning, similar word. So decadent literature, or the decadent movement, which appeared in the fin de cycle, right? The end of the cycle. What I like to call the Belle Epoque. I think it was a great age. I think the end of the 19th century was peak of Western civilization. And I keep saying that this is what we have to go back to. The British Empire ruled the world. We also had the French Empire. White people were like 25 or 30% of the world's population. People got married. They wore nice clothes. They listened to beautiful music. We had fantastic architecture. We had a positivity about us. We were hurtling into the future, and you know, there was you could get married, and you could have children, and families were respected. People believed in God. So I think it was great. I think it was a peak of Western civilization. I don't see how anybody could disagree with that statement. The world was a much better place when the British Empire ruled the world. That, in my opinion, is the old world order. We now live in the new world order. The new world order, which was given to us by Woodrow Wilson, the American president, who spoke about the new world order. What does it mean, new world order? It means the new world rules the world. What's the new world? America, right? So the old world order is gone. The old British Empire is gone. The French Empire, all the European imperial empires have collapsed. Now we live in the new world, which is the world dominated by American imperialism and Wilsonian idealism and the belief that everybody can be like America. And it's all falling to pieces, and we're all just absorbed in the American sexual revolution now, aren't we? Essentially, it's all gone down the toilets. So I think this period of history was a beautiful age. The French called it the Belle Epoque, but the people that lived at the time thought it was decadent. I guess they could see which way the wind was blowing. They could see we live in this great empire. It's the Roman Empire, and it's going to collapse. They knew it was going to collapse. even when they were in the middle of it, or perhaps they helped to bring about the collapse. Probably a little bit of both, right? But the decadent movement was kind of an anti-civilizational, hedonistic art movement. And this book, Arebos, against, I'm just going to call it Against Nature because it's easier. This is one of the key parts of one of the key examples of decadent literature. The inspiration for Oscar Wilde's The Picture of Dorian Gray, and probably the book that's given to Dorian Gray within the story, right? Or at least it kind of resembles that. So anyway, so Dorian Gray, he sold his soul to the devil. He's, falls in love with this girl, and then he rejects her. She commits suicide. He feels upset about it. Lord Henry says, don't worry, let's just go and have dinner. Let's go and have dinner at the club. We'll go and have dinner at the club. It doesn't matter, yes. So they go and have dinner at the club, and he gives him this book, which is all about, just being decadent and absorbing yourself in pleasure. And Dorian's like, well, all right then. And then the novel skips forward 18 years, right? And there's a beautiful part in the novel where it just describes, it's really quite amazing actually, but he goes into luxury and into jewels. Like there's a massive description of all the different types of jewels that different kings of old would have. And I think this is where the real kind of like Gothic element of the story comes out, in that I think the Goths, yes. I'm not really too queued up on Gothic literature, but the Gothic literature, in my opinion, is kind of anti-civilizational, in that the Goths obviously destroyed Rome, right? So it's kind of barbaric. It's kind of raw and sensual. It's kind of ancient. It's kind of elemental. Of course, Gothic literature is, these things, we take them as being cliches now, but the whole idea of like the setting, right? The rain is coming down, and there's lightning, and there's clouds, and the flash, and there's a forest, and there's an old decrepit castle on a hill, and there's a ghost inside, and a curse, and it's slightly supernatural, and that's what the Gothic novels are all about. So there's a little bit of, you could kind of feel the pull of that. For me, anyway, it struck me at this part of the novel because he really just dives into this quite amazing history of all of the luxuries of the past, the luxuries of ancient Rome, the luxuries of the ancient kings and queens of Europe, and the things that they used to have. Dorian just dives into this. It's very sensual. I'm not sure how many pages I read. I didn't actually read the book. I listened to the audiobook. So, first audiobook I've ever listened to. Very enjoyable experience. I don't know how many pages this description of jewels goes on for, but it's quite astounding. It's quite fascinating, really. The luxury of these of the ancient rich. So anyway, we jump forward 18 years into the future, and what happens is that Dorian has not aged, but he's surrounded by scandal now. People like him because he's rich and he's handsome, but he's got a really bad reputation. He's got a reputation for being a man who corrupts other men. He's kind of like become like Henry, I suppose. So no, he's not married, no children, no responsibility. He's just living this hedonistic lifestyle. The picture has become completely deformed and horrific. And one thing leads to another. Basil, the artist, comes to see him, and Dorian invites him up, and he shows him the picture, and he's horrified, and he says, what have you done? How is this happen? It's so sinful. Dorian kills him. He can't face the fact that he's essentially become a monster. He knows he's a monster because it's right there on the picture. He kills him. He gets rid of the body. He's consumed by guilt about that. And then the other story thread is that the brother of Sybil comes to kill him. He didn't know his name. He just knew him as being Prince Charming. But in an opium den, Dorian's feeling bad because he's killed Basil, so he goes to an opium den. And he runs into Sybil's brother, and he's going to kill him. But Dorian convinces him that he can't be this person because he's too young. Look at his face. And so he lets him go. But then this other old lady says, no, that's really him. He just doesn't get old. And so this guy is trying to kill Dorian, and he's sneaking around and he's following him, and he's hiding in the bushes. But he gets shot accidentally in the shooting party because they're shooting pheasants or whatever on Lord Henry's estate, or somebody's estate, one of these rich aristocrat estates. And they don't care, by the way. It's very amusing. They couldn't give a damn. Oh, a peasant's been shot. Oh, what's for dinner? You know, this kind of attitude. So you have these two story threads kind of roll out, and it seems like Dorian's really just going to get away with it all. He's going to get away with all of his crimes. He's not going to have to pay any consequences for the bad things that he's done. He's continuing to get away with it. And then what brings things to a head is the fact that the guilt that he feels inside is just too much. And so he tries to turn himself around. And he has a lover, this young lady, some peasant girl who he's met. And obviously he's a rich, handsome aristocrat, and she's fallen completely in love with him. And he's going to deflower her and use her. And in the end he rejects it. He says, no, I'll do the right thing, and I won't chase after her. I won't take her. And Henry laughs at him and says, well, you're only doing it for yourself, and it doesn't have any effect on the picture. And he realizes he's got all these sins, and so what he does is he tries to attack the picture. He tries to stab the picture, but he ends up stabbing himself. I mean, I'm not exactly sure what happens. He goes to stab the picture, and then the novel just says, the servants hear a scream, and they rush into the room, and Dorian's dead. And the picture is once again young, and Dorian has been transformed into this gnarled and grisly kind of old man, and he's ugly and it's horrible. And that's the end of Dorian Gray. Finally, he cannot escape the guilt. He cannot escape the guilt anymore. It catches up with him, and I don't think it's kind of, does he intentionally commit suicide, or is he trying to just attack? I mean, it's not really quite clear. It's not clear to me anyway. But it catches up with him in the end, and that's the lesson. That's the moral of the story, guys. That's the moral of the story. You can chase sensuality, and you can hide from its consequences, but eventually it's going to catch up with you, and it's going to drag you down, and it's going to destroy you. And that's what happens to Dorian Gray. And interestingly, this is what happens to Oscar Wilde in his life. Oscar Wilde, obviously known homosexual, and the picture of Dorian Gray is published in 1890. The Importance of Being Earnest, which is his famous play, is published in 1895, and in the same year he's convicted for gross indecency. And according to Wikipedia, he started it. It's his own fault. He issued a civil writ against John Sholto Douglas, the 9th Marquis of Queensberry, for criminal libel. So I guess this guy was calling him a fag, because the Marquis was the father of Wilde's lover, Lord Alfred Douglas. So the libel's hearings unearthed evidence that caused Wilde to drop his charges, but led to his own arrest and criminal prosecution for gross indecency with other males. So pretty funny stuff. The audacious homosexual, so popular, so loved. Oh, how dare you call me a fag? I will, this is libel. And then he ends up just hanging himself with this. It all backfires in his face. He ends up going to jail. While he's in prison, he apparently writes something called De Profundis, a long letter that discusses his spiritual journey through the trials and is a dark counterpoint to his early philosophy of pleasure. So, Dorian Gray is the story. It's kind of like, it's almost like he cursed himself with this book. It kind of fascinates me, actually. Like, you create a story, you put it out there in the world, and I don't know, man, like, it comes back and reflects on you. Like, I really don't know, like, is this like a law of attraction thing? You put a certain energy out into the world and then it comes back and it hits you. I mean, it kind of seems like it. But apparently Oscar Wilde is sorry in the end, and I think he ends up living in France. Yeah, he goes to France, never comes back to Britain or Ireland. Yeah, and dies right at the end of the century. So that's it. That's the end of Oscar Wilde. You can't run away. And when it comes to Arrebors by Joris Karl Huysman, this is really interesting because he goes on the same path. He ends up... So again, just in case you forgot, Arrebors, Against the Grain. This is the Yellow Book, which inspired Oscar Wilde and inspired Dorian Gray within the story. He ends up becoming a monk at the end of his life. Very interestingly, he wrote a novel in 1891. So this would have been after Dorian Gray was published. Arrebors was published in 1884. Yeah, so he wrote a novel called La Basse, right? Down There, or The Damned. And it's kind of like some kind of like mystery novel, kind of like Sherlock Holmes type thing. I'm not really sure, but there's a character in it called Durtal, who is a thinly disguised portrait of the author himself, and he would be the protagonist in three more of his novels. But anyway, Durtal is disgusted by the emptiness and vulgarity of the modern world. He seeks relief by turning to the study of the Middle Ages and begins to research the life of the notorious 15th century child murderer and torturer Gilles de Rais. Through his contacts in Paris, Durtal finds out that Satanism is not simply a thing of the past, but is alive in fin de siècle France. He embarks on an investigation of the occult underworld with the help of his lover, Madame Chantelouve. The novel culminates with a description of a black mass. Right? Black mass. I mean, it's just Satanism. This is literally just this is Eyes Wide Shut. I mean, it's kind of blackpilling in a way. Really, it's kind of blackpilling, isn't it? Because this novel came out almost what's the math on that? 130 years ago, right? 134 years ago, and you know, who's woken up? Nobody's woken up, right? I don't know. I don't want to be a doomer, but like the whole idea that the people are going to wake up. I don't know. Are they? Seems like people wake up a little bit and then they go back to sleep, you know, because this novel caused a massive stir in France back in 1891 when it was published. A black mass in Paris? How could such a thing happen? Very much like Eyes Wide Shut. Caused quite a stir, still causing quite a stir, right? Big conspiracy theory movie, okay? About elites having sex parties. By the way, filmed in a Rothschild mansion. And that mansion is built in an Oriental style, right? An Eastern style. Again, coming back to Islam, coming back to the sensuality of Islam. Such a sensuous religion, really, because what you have. Did I say this earlier in this recording or not? I don't know. Maybe I'm repeating myself. Maybe I'm not. I can't remember what I planned to say and what I actually do say. But anyway, what's the goal of Islam? Go to heaven and have sex with 72 virgin girls, Houthis, right? No, they're not called Houthis. They're called Houris. Sorry, is that where the word whore comes from? I don't know, but the Islamic heaven is sexual. It's a sexual heaven. Christian heaven is not like that. In fact, one of the reasons the devil is cast out of heaven is because he's having sex with human women. God doesn't like it, so he throws him out, and that's why he goes to hell. So the Christian version of heaven is specifically non-sexual. Islamic heaven is sexual. So it's a totally different religion, really. But this is why Muslims are just, they're into rape and this kind of thing, right? They're all about the sex. They're actually it's actually a very, very sensual religion. And yeah, the Rothschild mansion, Eyes Wide Shut. It's made in an Oriental style. Okay. Epstein's bathhouse. That's a Turkish bathhouse, right? That's on his island. The famous one with the blue stripes on it. That's a Turkish bathhouse. So a lot of sex stuff coming from the East. What was the point I was making? I was just making the point, like Eyes Wide Shut. I'm just making the point. This book came out 100 and something years ago, talking about a black satanic mass in the middle of Paris. What's happened? Well, the book's been forgotten, and people just forget, and they forget this stuff. Eyes Wide Shut, right? It's staring you in the face, and people just forget, right? There's on the back of the dollar bill, there's literally a pyramid with an all-seeing eye on it, and we're supposed to just imagine that that's perfectly normal. Nothing to see there, guys. Nothing weird going on there. Just look in the other in Washington D.C. There's a giant flipping obelisk. It's not an obelisk, but that giant tower thing they built. It's just covered in occultic symbology. Nothing to see here, guys. Don't worry about it. Look in the other direction. Eyes wide shut. And the more and more people don't go to church and don't believe in God, the more materialistic they become, and the more easy it is to dupe them, to be honest with you, because they just become spiritually blind, and so they don't believe in demons. And if you don't believe in demons, you're going to be in for a shock when you meet one, right? But they just seem to think like satanic ritual abuse and black masses and devil worship, they seem to think, it's just incomprehensible. This is just something that Hollywood talks about. It doesn't actually happen. Well, of course it happens. Of course rich people are going to do that. Of course people like Lord Henry are going to... Lord Henry does not engage in that in this book. The Picture of Dorian Gray is not about that, by the way. Let me make that very clear. I'm just saying that the author of the book which inspired Dorian Gray also wrote a book about a black mass in the middle of Paris, right? So you're just half a step away from this kind of thing. And that is where this kind of philosophy will lead you. Dorian Gray doesn't engage in any of that. Okay? In fact, Dorian Gray isn't even really that much of a bad person. He's not a thief. He doesn't murder anybody. Right? He's just a wealthy guy that just enjoys a sensual lifestyle. I don't think there's any... You could read some gayness into the book. I don't see any homosexuality in the book, personally. But you know what gay people are like. They'll see the gayness in there, right? And obviously it was written by a homosexual, so maybe if you read between the lines, you can see it there. Excuse me, but I can't see it. Dorian Gray is not. He's not a good person, but he's not a thief. He's not a murderer. He doesn't beat people up. He's not violent. He's just spending his money following sensual pleasures, and he breaks women's hearts. He's a playboy. That's all he is. So he's not really, really, really bad. It's just he lives an empty life of sensuality, essentially. So I guess you can feel kind of what he murders. Actually, I say that he does murder. What am I talking about? He murders his friend Basil, so he is a murderer. So like, what am I talking about? But he's not a serial killer. He's not bad like so many of the characters that we're accustomed to in 21st century literature. It's one murder. I mean, one murder. What's the big deal, guys? But I suppose that's... And he feels really guilty about it. So, you know, a lot of the characters that we read about today, a lot of antagonists, a lot of bad guys that we read about in stories today are 100 times worse than Dorian Gray. But I suppose the lesson is that if you engage in sensuality, then you're always going to be half a step away from committing some kind of crime. And if you do commit some kind of crime, then you're not going to want to own up to it, are you? You're just going to want to step over it, which is, you know, what he does. Because why? Because you're taking pleasure to be the highest moral good. That's it. That's the aesthetic philosophy. Art for art's sake. Follow the art, and art should inspire life. And that's what it is. You're deifying art. That's essentially what these people did. They're deifying beauty. I mean, really, to be honest with you, like, I'm not really defending Dorian Gray, but it's not, like, in comparison to today's bland and awful materialism and the junk culture that we have today. Like, Dorian Gray, at least he believed in beauty. At least he could appreciate beauty. And at least the people that followed this aesthetic philosophy and this decadent philosophy, at least they created great works of art and great works of literature. And this is a brilliant book to read. The prose is just astounding. It's, you know, it's a very, very, very beautiful story. The language is just absolutely seductive. So, I mean, at least they believed in something, right? Better to believe in something than to believe in nothing, which is what we have now. So I guess you can say that in defense of Dorian Gray. But nonetheless, it all catches up with him in the end. He ends up killing somebody. He manages to get away with that. He manages to get away from the brother of the girl who committed suicide because of him. But it weighed down his soul. The crimes, they weighed him down. And you know, that's what happens. You do bad things. Eventually it's gonna drag you down, and that's what happened to Dorian Gray. And so that's pretty much all I got to say about this. We've got 2 minutes. What am I going to say for the last 2 minutes before we hit the 1 hour mark? Yeah, 2 minutes. There's one last theme about lineage, which Dorian Gray shares with the character of the Yellow Book. And that is it's the end of his line. This is, again, it's the decadent theme. It's the end of his line. He's an aristocrat. He has an old family. And he talks about this within the story. He has an old and ancient family who engaged in many pleasures and had many adventures. And he's got all their pictures on the wall. And he's the last one. Does he take responsibility? Does he have children? Does he continue the line forwards? No, he just devotes himself in a very, very selfish way to pleasure, which then just ultimately destroys him, drags him down and destroys him. It's kind of like what's happening to us now. You know, it's kind of amazing, isn't it, looking back? These people thought it was the end. They thought it was the end back then. They thought it was the end, and it's 100 times worse now. It's 100 times worse. How much worse will it be in 100 years from now? Right? In 100 years from now, will they look back at our age and us complaining about grooming gangs and transvestites and all of this stuff that we like to complain about in the dissident right? Are they going to look back at us and say, "Oh man, you guys had no idea. You guys had no idea how bad things were going to get"? Is that what holds Is that what is coming to us in the future? Oh dear Lord, I really hope not. I really hope not. Anyway, I'm just what can I say? 10 seconds. I just want to hit that 1 hour mark. Great book. Do recommend it. Brilliant book. Dorian Gray. And there you go. We crossed the 1 hour mark. God bless. Thank you very much for listening, and thank you. Goodbye.